How to use epigenetics to break the routines and the habits that are not serving you in your life. I'm Dr. Trish Leigh. Let me explain that to you. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the concept of nature versus nurture in our development and our growth across our lifetime, and how those two aspects can either take you down a road of growth or a road of stunted growth in terms of our routines and our habits, our thought processes, and tapping into our feelings and being able to use them for our advantage. Then I'm going to talk about epigenetics. Epigenetics is a field in science and healthcare, especially in integrative medicine, that we know that we can use our thoughts and our behaviors and our actions to override or to change the expression of our genes for the positive. It is a way that we can change the neural pathways. So we'll talk about that in just a minute, but let's think first about nature versus nurture and how it can really impact how we live our lives. So, number one, nature is the familial predisposition or the genes, and I always use them in quotes because of epigenetics, but the way that our genes are expressed and how that falls out in the behaviors of our mind and our body, as I always call it. So nature is what you're born with, and I always joke that brains don't fall far from the tree. So our brain performance pattern is very similar to that of our parents. But the epigenetics is that we can use our environment, which is the nurture, to be able to override the expression of how our brain pattern that we were born with, how it falls out. So a very easy example to understand of this is anxiety and depression. So the science shows that anxiety and depression have a familial component to it, that there's a genetic expression to mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. But that doesn't necessarily mean that because your mother had anxiety and depression, that you necessarily need to have that also, because of nature and nurture. So nature is what you're born with, nurture is what you do with it. So, like for me, for example, I have become very educated, and of course education's important, but in a classical sense. But then I've also been on a journey of personal development my entire life. So the way that I use my brain is very different from the way that my parents have used their brains across their lifetime. And even though my nature is very was very similar to theirs, the way that I've used my brain across my lifetime has impacted it and has changed it for the better. That's what neuroplasticity is. Neuroplasticity is our ability to be able to use our brains to change the way that they are performing. And that has a caveat, because what neuroplasticity shows and the science behind it shows is that if you do all the right things, you can heal your own brain. That's epigenetics, using our thoughts and our actions and our behaviors to override our genes. So the way that you use your nurture, the way that you spend your days and your minutes and your hours can change the nature that you were born with. So some examples of that is I eat organic food so I don't put toxins into my body. I limit the amount that I drink. I exercise every single day. I drink a ton of water. I limit the amount of alcohol I drink. I engage in yoga. The Hubs is a chiropractor, so I've had chiropractic in my life for over 20 years. Those are integrative medicine practices that can heal your body from the inside out. Guess what? One of the number one ways that you can do that, you probably guessed it, brain training. That's how I ended up as a board certified neurofeedback practitioner, is because I started as a speech language pathologist helping people with neurodevelopmental, neurodegenerative, and disorders that fall out of neurological issues. I also have PhD training in cognitive science. So to me, those two roads collided in my nurture, and I'm like, what can I do to help myself, my family, first and foremost, to be able to heal themselves from within? And then how can I extend that to my work with people who have neurological disorders. Brain training is that. That is the mode, because we're using your brain to enhance its own performance by receiving feedback. So if you don't know how neurofeedback brain training works, the way that it works is you use a screen. Don't get me wrong, the irony is not lost on me, but you use an app and you use a screen. And when you're watching, the way that ours works is when you're watching YouTube videos, yes, you can watch me if you want. When you are watching the YouTube videos in a specialized, highly specialized app, the screen brightens and the audio is louder when your brain is in the zone of making perfect processing speed. If it goes out of the zone and it goes into an anxious mode, if it goes into a mode of decreased focus, if it goes into a depressed mode, the screen dims and the audio goes lower. That is using epigenetics to combat the nature and the nurture. So the nurture that I explained about how I live my life, all the things that I do across my days and my minutes, is using neuroplasticity as my best friend, using it in an advantageous way. But if you have an anxiety brain pattern and if you have a depression brain pattern, the nature you were born with, and then you unfortunately have gotten into the habits of feeling anxious and feeling depressed and canceling your plans and not being able to go out and spending your days on the couch and not leaving your room and falling behind in your work and your school, you are doing all the wrong things. You're using your nurture to hardwire in those anxiety and depression brain patterns. That's neuroplasticity as your worst enemy. So we're going to use epigenetics to pull yourself out of that bed, start training your brain with neurofeedback brain training, and then getting out there and using the thoughts and the actions and the movement towards your goal of being healthy and feeling healthy, getting on purpose and being able to rock out your own life. That's how nature and nurture work together. Epigenetics on top of it. Epi literally means above genetics, to move you forward so that you can live the rest of your life on purpose in your work, in your relationships, and in your play, so you can feel calm and relaxed and find the joy in your life. That is possible. That's how neuroplasticity works, and I'm here for you. If you want help in that journey, visit my website at drtrishleigh.com. You'll see the tabs across the top. I work with people with ADHD and attention issues, with anxiety and depression. I work with people with internet addictions, and I work with peak performers, people who just want to be a better version of themselves, and professionals too. So I am here for you if you are on a journey of wanting to become the best version of yourself. So go check out my programs, and remember, control your brain or it'll control you.